But let's kick off the focus on the Big Six, gents, for the Premier League season. Who's going to win the title? Who will finish in the top four? Let's now focus in on those big boys at the top who are expected to be battling it out all season long. Let's start with Manchester United. Nick, I'm going to come to you. Erik ten Hag's philosophy, it's very clear to see, even during pre-season, they've had some positive results overall, even with the Ronaldo saga and the Frankie de Jong saga rumbling on in the background. But what do you think about Manchester United heading into the season? Where are they at under Erik ten Hag? Or is it kind of just too early to tell right now if they're going to be successful or not?
Well, it is too early to tell how successful they're going to be. You know, Andy and I and you have had this kind of disagreement over the past few months. I think it's unquestioned that they're going to be better. How much better and how quickly they can turn it around. I mean, is Lisandro Martinez going to come in and legitimately potentially keep a Harry Maguire out of the lineup if Harry Maguire isn't at his best? Is Fred reborn? And I think maybe we may start to view how we viewed Fred in the first place. But the key word you touched on, Joe, is philosophy. Because for two managers now, counting Ralph Rangnick, we didn't quite know what we were getting from them. There were weird discussions. And again, once Ole started buying into the, I have to play the we're Manchester United, and that's why we're going to get better, and it must be better. That kind of became his philosophy, and that didn't work. Rangnick was kind of put himself in a bad position, was also put in an awkward position. This may be, just by virtue of having someone with a steady mind and a clear indication of what he wants to do, an excellent opportunity for Erik ten Hag to go out there and present a Manchester United that everybody can kind of get behind and understand. And I think if the fans, even the ones who won't be happy with the progress if it's not rocket fuel, if they can see that there's a philosophy, he'll get just that little bit more time before all of the pitchforks come out, pun intended.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. I think it's just nice for them to see that there is a clear plan and philosophy now in terms of the playing style. They haven't really had that, have they? The last few seasons, it's just been a bit of a mismatch of, we have these great players, let's chuck them together. We'll be a counter-attacking team and we'll rely on them to win points and win games. But Andy, Nick mentioned there, that philosophy, when you look at pre-season and you look at the performances of Anthony Martial, Marcus Rashford, Jadon Sancho, that fluid front three is really a hallmark of Erik ten Hag's team at Ajax that was so successful over the last few seasons. And with the Ronaldo situation, him wanting to leave and not being around for the whole of pre-season, it's actually like it's forced Manchester United to play without him, and they look a lot better for it. Is that a fair argument? And you do think those kind of guys, with the World Cup in the background there for all three of those players I mentioned, they need a really good start to the season as well, right?
Yeah, it's interesting because we've been talking about this since last year when the signing was made, and it almost feels like Manchester United have a get-out-of-jail-free card right now, a year early, get out of a contract or a sentence, if you will, and they just don't want to use it. And I don't really understand what the hesitancy is. I understand the commercial and marketing appeal of having a player of that caliber around and part of the team and just attached to the name of your club. I get that part of it. But when you look at the way it affected the team on the field last season, where they finished, and the fact that they are trying to go in a new direction now, it seems to make even more sense that you would use this opportunity to get out now while you still can, if you're the club. I don't know if they're going to do that. As far as the philosophy goes, it is good to have a philosophy and an identity that you're building towards. I do question, though, and obviously we'll see this play out over the course of the season, but I do question, for as many good on-ball, good passers, good technical players as they have there, you kind of have to have the ball all the time to be able to make the most of that. And so I question a little bit, where is the ball winning going to come from defensively? I think that they will be pretty good in possession and on the attack. I think they'll score goals. I think they'll concede a lot of goals, though, as well, because they've gone from having too many defensive midfielders sitting in front of the back line to not really having any ball winners to sit in front of the back line and protect the center backs. If you don't have a good defensive midfielder, especially in the Premier League these days, it doesn't matter who your center backs are. They are going to be exposed. They're going to be challenged in ways that you don't want your center backs challenged over the course of a game. So I question that part of it. And I don't think De Jong is the fix for that, because that's not really the profile player that he is. So I have questions, but obviously a plan in place, they're moving in the right direction for sure.
Yeah, and Fred's been sneaky good in pre-season as well. So it looks like he's going to be the main man and sort of maybe plays to his strengths a little bit better on being a holding midfielder, but also having the license to get a bit further forward and up and down. I think that's the key under Ten Hag, right? Midfield and attack, it's just one fluid unit. Everyone's interchanging. And without Ronaldo, I think that's a lot easier with the other players that they have there. I think for Manchester United, Bruno Fernandes, Christian Eriksen, how do they slot those two superstar players in? Smooth on the ball, like you said, Andy, great at dictating the tempo of the game. But then when they're going the other way and defending towards their own goal, do they have enough players who can just shore things up? Dalot's looked really good at right wing back at times during pre-season. Malacia and Luke Shaw will battle it out for the left back spot. Lissandro Martinez and Harry Maguire look like they're battling it out for that position in defence as well. So some really intriguing times at Manchester United. But I'm not, Nick, I don't know what you think about this. I'm not going with them to get anywhere near the top four. I think that's too big of a step this season, considering Chelsea, Tottenham, and even Arsenal where they're at. But I can see United easily finishing in the top six, but I think that's just too big of a step this season. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I can see it exactly how you're saying it. And yet in my head, there's a part of me that says we've seen crazier things. And what we talked about a couple weeks ago has kind of stuck with me, really, that second season, that jump that we could see from Sancho. Let's not forget that for 2 seasons, he was one of the only players in the top 5 leagues to be carrying double-digit goals and assists. And that's special. I mean, the people who do that are your Messis, your Mbappes, your De Bruynes. And I just think he's going to have the chance to unlock something. It may end up being that perhaps he is not the same fit for the Premier League that he is in the Bundesliga. We've seen that before. But I think even if that's true, there's still a level he's going to find this year that he wasn't able to find last year for a number of reasons, not the least of which to be the managers who ended up fighting for their jobs and not maybe letting a talented piece find its way. And also, it'll be interesting to me, what happens if you've got Ronaldo, who's a little shaky and where he needs to be mentally, and what happens when Martinez and Varane are the 2 players playing next to each other? How does a Harry Maguire, who by all accounts is beloved in that room, how does he react to that if he's the odd man out?
Definitely interesting times at Manchester United with Erik ten Hag's rebuild. And talking about rebuild, Mikel Arteta has rebuilt Arsenal over the last few years. That's the next team we're going to focus on here, because they've had a wonderful pre-season, Andy. I mean, scored goals galore, big wins, hammered Chelsea and Orlando, just smashed Sevilla as well. Gabriel Jesus looks like the best signing of the summer, potentially, with the goals he's scoring in pre-season. So is this a season that they do finally finish back in the top 4? Because they came ever so close last season, and they've improved, it looks like, at least on paper.
Yeah, I think there's an opening for them this season if you kind of look around the rest of the Big Six. And preseason, I'll tell you from a little bit of experience, is typically the time for optimism in North London. It tends to go downhill pretty quickly thereafter. But right now, I think that there's a lot of reason for optimism. Aside from the final 3 games of the season last year for Arsenal, it was a massive step forward. Had they been able to get into the Champions League and then unlock that next tier of players that would have been available to him, the type of players that they chased, went after, and then ultimately did not get, and went to clubs either in the Champions League or just with a slightly higher profile than them. So I can see them taking another big step forward. I still have some of the same kind of questions that I do about Manchester United as well. Where is, I think, the defensive stability going to come from? We know the names going forward. We know what they can do in possession. They have really shown it this preseason. But there's still a bit of that lacking someone to take the game or the team or a teammate or the situation, whatever, what have you, by the scruff of the neck and take control of a moment. Because that's where it seems to slip away for Arsenal, is in moments. Yeah. It's not about prolonged periods. It's not about even games. It's about small moments, I think, of having the maturity, of having the leadership. And I think that's the next step forward for this team this season. And as those young players age into closer to their prime years, I guess we won't even say that they're into them yet. I think that they'll start to evolve, and I think just have a more solid foundation to build on. So I think this is a top 4 season for Arsenal. I really do.
They're a good young team, as you mentioned there. A lot of really good young players: Odegaard, Saka, Martinelli, Smith Rowe, and then you bring in someone like Gabriel Jesus to finish off those chances that they've been creating. Yeah. It bodes well, and they have got better defensively, to be fair to them, over last season, especially with Ramsdale, Tomiyasu, Ben White coming in. the end of the season kind of just clouds everyone's memory, but generally over the course of the campaign, they were much improved defensively. Nick, moving on to Tottenham across North London, superb off-season for them. The additions really strengthened the squad. Obviously, Richarlison, Perisic, Basuma coming in. I'm going to ask you, because I'm going to put this question to Andy in a minute, but a title bid, is that on the cards for Tottenham? Are we getting above our station here? Because they look like, on paper, if Son and Kane are firing on all cylinders, the only team that can really challenge Man City and Liverpool for the title this season. Is that a fair assessment?
Is your manager Antonio Conte? I mean, I don't mean to sound crazy, but this looks like as much of a Conte team as we've seen at Chelsea or Inter Milan. And in fact, there are shades of that Inter Milan team that did. I mean, that was history. That was Scudetti history there, ending this row of championships. And my question will be, do they have the depth in the back? And they might. I'm not saying they don't. But when you looked at Inter Milan, there were these towers that you could just trust to get the job done. When you look back at Chelsea there. So it's awesome to be a Spurs fan and to look and think, wow, our midfield, look at this depth. Wow, our attack, look at this depth. The goalkeeper to me is still probably should get praised more every season for how consistent he generally is in Lloris. But what is that back three going to function? It should be better because it's got a half season of togetherness between itself. But is it going to be good enough to outgun or hold down the guns of your Man Cities and your Liverpools?
Andy, as a Spurs fan, what do you think, mate? Is this the year that they could challenge and get back right at the top? Or would you just be happy with another top four finish and to build again?
Yeah, I can't quite bring myself to answer that question with a yes. I think that it's the best opportunity that they have had. Even if you go back to the couple of seasons where they went close to the title and finished second or third, they had no business being there. The squad, if you look at the squad from those teams, I think you really start to get a sense of how much Mauricio Pochettino overachieved while he was at Spurs, given the resources that he was given by Daniel Levy. And I think that's one reason why he's so beloved and why Spurs fans were so sad to see him go, wanted him back, et cetera, et cetera. But Nick brings up I think really the only point that matters. Antonio Conte is your manager. You have a chance because he is someone who, to Nick's point, he didn't have the most talented team in Italy when he broke that reign, but he did it anyway. He has this almost cult of personality where he gets players to buy in. They want to play for him. They want to make Antonio Conte happy because there is something about him that inspires and motivates players in a way that not a lot of other managers get. And I'll go back to a point that I said, I think at the end of last season, just in general about clubs. If you have a special person in charge, you can be, for as long as that special person is in charge of your club, a special club. And I think that Spurs have one of the handful, maybe three in the Premier League right now, of those managers. There's only 10, a dozen or so around the world at a given time. And I think they've got one. So they've got an opportunity. I don't think they'll quite have the depth in the back. That is the weakness spot. If there's still a signing to be made, I think it'll be there. And that could determine whether they're just third or fourth, or if they're actually in the mix with those big two.
And talking about a London club with a special manager, Chelsea, Thomas Tuchel, a lot of upheaval over the summer. New ownerships come in. Lost a lot of key players. I mean, Christensen and Rudiger have gone. Obviously, Azpilicueta and Alonso may move on. Lukaku's left. Not a great off-season in terms of results as well. Tuchel's already been talking about sort of the mentality, the intensity after that big defeat to Arsenal on their US preseason tour. And also they've missed out on a lot of big targets as well. When you look at Jules Koundé, Rafinha going to Barcelona, they keep going for players that other teams are beating them for. Nick, what do you think about Chelsea? Because it looks like potentially they could be right on the verge of losing their spot in the top four. It looks like trouble's brewing a little bit, but they have signed the likes of Koulibaly and Raheem Sterling, experienced quality players at the international level who've been there and done it and won trophies. So what do you think about Chelsea? It really seems like a 50-50 situation right now, doesn't it?
It does. I wonder what's going to happen if things don't go well at the start. And the reason you look at that is they are a bit removed from super glory, right? This Champions League honeymoon. I think Rudiger was a bigger piece of what they do than a lot of us realized, especially because for about a year, we didn't see him really utilized in a good way at all, or half a year, I should say, at least. So here's the thing. What are they going to look like when Thomas Tuchel's dealing with this next batch of adversity, which we know is going to come? Because it does feel like it's not going to take long for Lukaku to find his footing over in Italy. And when that happens, it's going to be like, well, why couldn't you get this guy to score? Because about a year ago, plus a month, so about 11 months ago, what were we saying? This guy looked like, for a couple of weeks, the key piece. He looked like what was going to complete the puzzle and make them part of a battle. And when you look at that cog or that question mark or that variable, I think that center forward variable, with all due respect to what they're going to get from Sterling and Havertz, who I'm excited about, that's one. I think we can all agree Lukaku's going to score over in Italy.
Yeah.
And it's going to be hard to avoid that.
No, definitely. And I think defensively in midfield, Chelsea are pretty solid generally. And it's all about the personnel they have up there. Is it the personnel that's the problem or the formation and the system under Thomas Tuchel? And I think we've seen enough now to suggest it's probably a bit of both. They haven't found the right fit and combination, but also Chelsea in the run of play sometimes just a bit laboursome in terms of the way they move the ball and a bit predictable in the final third. So they need to find some kind of spark this season, and I'd be intrigued to see who they pick up late in the window. Focusing on now on the title favourites, Liverpool came so close to winning the Premier League title last season. I think they're building up quite nicely to the new campaign, lads. I mean, Darwin Núñez scoring in the Community Shield final win, looking sharp. Mohamed Salah has re-signed on a long-term contract, which is a big boost for them over the off-season. Andy, do you think revenge is in the air for Jurgen Klopp and Liverpool when it comes to battling Man City for the title? Because, yes, they've lost Sadio Mane, but aside from that, Liverpool pretty much the same team. So can they do it, and can they go one step further and actually win the title this season?
Yeah, revenge is certainly on their mind. I don't know if it's in the air or on the cards, as they say, but I think it's going to be another long title race between these two, because if you look at kind of the off seasons, the transfer windows that they've had, a lot of similarities going on. Both of them obviously bringing in a new big name, potentially, hopefully for their sake, superstar striker. They both lost a pretty important piece there along the attack as well. Raheem Sterling, we should mention, going to Chelsea. And then you've obviously got Mane going to Bayern Munich. Liverpool already had the replacement. They obviously made the signing of Luis Diaz in January with knowing for what was probably to come this summer, whether it was going to be Salah, whether it was going to be Mane, someone was going to go. I think they probably made the right call keeping Salah. I think the influence that he has on the team is just greater than anything that Mane does. Obviously, we know how good he is from the penalty spot for them over the course of a season. And so the question for me with Liverpool, because I don't, at this point, I don't think we can really question much of what Pep does, because I think he's, at least in the Premier League, let's say, I think he's got enough of a track record and a body of work at this point that we can trust that whatever adjustments he's going to have to make or Haaland is going to have to make, that they will get that done and taken care of. But I have a question with Liverpool. Same position as the other two questions I've had so far. Defensive midfield, I'm starting to get a little bit. Jordan Henderson is getting on just a little bit. He's been playing a little bit further forward. Fabinho is very injury prone. And so I just wonder, do they have the depth in the middle of the park? And that's been an issue for them for a couple of seasons, and they've just managed to get by. So I'm going to be keeping an eye on that for sure.
Yeah, it's a really good point. Naby Keita, Oxlade-Chamberlain, some of the players they really lean on there were missing for large chunks for the last few seasons. So, yeah, going to be intriguing. I think Liverpool are going to be there right at the end of the season, just like they always seem to be of Man City, season after season now. And Nick, talking about Man City, adding Erling Haaland, Calvin Phillips, Alvarez, they're all looking good. Even that miss for Haaland in the Community Shield, we're not really reading into that too much. He's going to score a lot of goals. But do you think losing the likes of Zinchenko, Gabriel Jesus, Sterling, Fernandinho, how much of an impact is that going to have? And Man City still, rightly so, the favourites for the title right now. They are the favourites with the bookies, but is it really close between them and Liverpool, or do you think City, it's still their title to lose?
It's still their title to lose, but the margin is as thin as it's ever been. And I'm talking like in respect to a figure who just passed, that scene in Goodfellas where he's got to slice the garlic just so thin so it melts into the sauce. That's what we're talking about here. It really, to me, if you made me pick right now, I'd be like, I don't know, goal difference head to head. But there's still something to me in solving problems, and that Pep Guardiola has been able to do. He has almost always, except when his team gets eliminated from the Champions League, had the right things to say, at least outward facing, to assuage how everybody's feeling. The question that I have with City is about if they have to chase it this year. Well, that might be a little bit better for them, right? That they have to have a target and have something to chase, because a lot of their players will be going to the World Cup. A lot of them will be playing on World Cup favorites even. And also, who is the personality that's going to step forward? Because we know those names you all mentioned carry something else in common. Fernandinho, Raheem Sterling, these are big-time guys that people tended to rally around, and maybe not the fireballs that we've seen when you look at their three best players right now, in my opinion, besides Haaland: De Bruyne, Rodri, Diaz. Yes, of course, fiery competitors, but not necessarily that sort of magnet that draws everyone together. So I think the only danger for them is, Liverpool goes 38-0, or that they have some time to figure out who is the new nucleus, who is that new driving force for their team.
I have two big things on Man City. Number one, how does signing Erling Haaland impact their style of play? I still think they're better with a false nine in a lot of situations. We saw that last season. How many times the last few seasons we said, oh, if only they had a proper number 9, they would have finished off that ball they cut back to the 6-yard box and nobody was there. But I think in the run of play, a lot of the times they're better being fluid in the movement, and it just suits them better. But Haaland will score a lot of goals, that's fine. But how does he slot into that sort of ecosystem, right, of the midfield and attack there that's just so fluid? And the other big question is at centre-back. If Diaz or Laporte, who have both had a lot of injury problems the last season or two, if they go down, Nathan Ake, is he the next man up? Is he really someone you can rely on through 4 or 5 months of a season if you have to help you win a title? I'm not sure. I think they need an extra player there. But what we are sure about is there's going to be a very exciting season coming up over at ProSoccerTalk on NBCSports.com. We'll keep you updated with all the latest team news, how to watch information, and analysis of this battle to finish in the top 4 and win the title. So excited for this, lads. It is going to be one heck of a race at the top of the table.
Hi there, I'm Rebecca Lowe, studio host for NBC's coverage of the Premier League. Don't forget to hit subscribe to watch highlights all season long, and be sure to tune in for Premier League mornings every weekend at 7 a.m. Eastern. And for even more content, head over to Peacock, where we've got live games, original series, and a dedicated round-the-clock Premier League channel featuring studio shows, classic matches, and much more.